So, good morning, everyone, and welcome to Political No Brainer Podcast, a podcast where we move past winner takes all politics and into real conversation. I am excited to be here with Jackson Lahmeyer, author of Chasing After the Wind and also the White House Faith, part of the White House Faith Council. You were there when President Trump signed an executive order based on Christian, about essentially a Christian policy coming from Washington, D.C. Is that right? Or.
Yeah, no, I was in the Oval the day that President Trump signed the executive order to establish the White House Faith Office, which is a first of its kind. There's never been a faith office in the White House. There's been initiatives that are faith-based, but never a faith office. And so this is brand new. It's in the West Wing of the White House with direct report to the Commander-in-Chief. And so it's exciting to be a part of it and glad to be on with you today.
Thank you so much, Jackson. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm excited to be on with you today. I've got, a lot of stuff to talk about, and it's all really important stuff, really. The president is known for sometimes being controversial, sometimes doing some of the heavy lifting that we all have wished for, and some of us haven't essentially wished for. So there's definitely a strong interest in this administration, to say the least. And I'm very interested in this administration. I'm also interested in your points of view that that's exciting that we have this executive office. Have you heard back from the president since that Oval Office moment? Is there any not necessarily the president, but what's going on with that new initiative, with that new office?
Oh, yeah. I led Pastors for Trump on the 24 campaign, and now being a part of the Faith Office, serve on the National Faith Advisory Board. And so, I've spent more time at the White House this year than I thought I ever would in my entire life. That's because President Trump, he wants pastors up there, and he wants to eradicate the anti-Christian bias, which has been in our federal government truly under Barack Obama, accelerated under Joe Biden. And so there's a lot of work that has been taking place in the White House Faith Office. President Trump then went a step further, and he created the Anti-Christian Bias Task Force, which is solely dedicated to eradicating the anti-Christian bias out of the DOJ, FBI, IRS, ATF, you name it. So this is a top priority of President Trump, that religious freedom is so foundational to the American experiment. Just as nobody should get in between a person and their doctor, nobody should get in between a person and God, especially the U.S. government. And so you should be able to practice your faith without being concerned you're going to be targeted by the federal government because of your faith. And this is priority very high for President Trump, which is one of the things I love about the guy. This is, as a pastor, obviously I'm biased on this, but I think religious freedom is so foundational to who we are as a society that you have to preserve it and you have to protect it.
So, my question right now for this, was there a bias pushed towards another faith during the Biden administration or during the Obama administration? Was there just a particular dissension towards the Christian faith during these administrations?
Yeah. And so one of the beautiful things, you can go to the White House's official website, and there are cases after cases after cases exemplifying the anti-Christian bias that was there, because a lot of people are like, I don't know if that's true. And so, obviously you want to make sure you have case studies and examples to show that. And, it was through the DOJ, FBI, ATF, but primarily the IRS. The IRS was used as a weapon to target conservative Christians, to upend their lives, pastors being audited at rates that no other demographic in our country being audited at. And so this was a specific targeting that was really initiated under Barack Obama, accelerated under Joe Biden, but thanks be unto the Lord, is being undone by President Trump. One quick example: Grand Canyon University, largest Christian university in the world, received the largest fine ever by the IRS for them being a conservative Christian university meddling in politics. And so the Biden administration fined them the largest fine ever. President Trump completely undid that. Now you got to think about this. Harvard University doesn't receive a fine at all for being politically engaged. But a Christian university receives the largest fine in U.S. history. Why is that? Because there was a targeting of conservative Christians. That's just one example. Liberty University is another example. And so good things are happening. These wrongs are being made right under this administration.
So this is a clear example of we don't want special treatment, we just want equal treatment. Is that
Yeah,
correct?
yeah.
Absolutely. So, and that is a beautiful thing that the president has undertaken, and that is something I'm sure that other politicians have talked about and have not undertaken. Ultimately, when they get into office, they come to the realization that some of the things they promised on the campaign trail are not really realistic or not really politically correct or not really going to work in their favor in some respect as far as their future hopes and dreams for politics. That happens a lot. Where that doesn't happen, and I can honestly say I've had my different, I guess you could say I have had my differences with the Trump administration and their approach, but I do respect the fact that when they've decided to really do what they say they're going to do. So one clear example was, and I always say this as one clear and concise example, was Ronald Reagan promised to close the Department of Education. And ultimately in his 8-year watch, it grew in size and scope. So that was a promise made and a promise not really kept, really unkept, really in a way disregarded completely. The president did promise certain things and he delivered on them. But the question has always been when it comes to, and President Trump feels like he is targeted more than the rest of the politicians ever before. I don't necessarily agree he's targeted more. I do think he's targeted a lot, but I also think a lot of politicians targeted a lot. For example, Judge Robert Bork, when he was nominated to the Supreme Court, there's literally now a word in the Webster Dictionary called borking, which is essentially meaning a character assassination. He was character assassinated. And unfairly so. Even though I don't know that I would want such a conservative justice on the Supreme Court, I don't know that I don't want such a conservative Supreme Court justice on the Supreme Court. But so my point is President Trump being targeted unfairly for this kind of following through with a policy and a promise?
Well, I think on this specific promise that he made, it's caused him a lot of turmoil because, the left doesn't want us to believe that there is an anti-Christian bias within our federal government. They don't want that out there because that's against their narrative. Their narrative is that Christianity is the problem in this nation, that Christian nationalism is the problem, that Christian nationalists are the threat, not the ones being targeted. So it goes against the narrative. And when President Trump does this, it just sets them off. So on this specific issue, I think he's been totally unfairly treated because this doesn't go along with the narrative that the left would like the general population to believe, because it's hard for some people. They actually don't believe there's an anti-Christian bias in our government. They actually don't believe it. However, the cases are there. It's undeniable. And so when President Trump launches an anti-Christian bias task force, it kind of seems like he's giving special favor or treatment to Christians. And that's actually not the case at all. It's what you brought up earlier. We all want to be fairly treated under the same exact law. Just because you're a Christian, you should not have to be worried that you're going to be audited simply because you're a conservative Christian. And that's been the case under Barack Obama and Joe Biden. And so now President Trump is leveling out the playing field. And to me, that's a beautiful thing.
Right. So, and I think so too. Like I said, I don't want anybody to be treated. I just want everybody to be treated equally. That's the premise of America. That is very much the premise of America. So that's what we want. And if that's what we're getting, that's why we're here to clarify it with you and other people from the administration that there is this sense that President Trump is being his policies, his procedures, his actions are always being criticized. And he himself conveys that message that he feels like the victim of that unfair. But isn't that, I guess you would say, the prize of leadership, that you do follow through what you're doing, and when you get that criticism, you're also being the guy that does follow through what he's doing rather than the guy that retreats when the criticism comes.
Yeah, it's part of the territory, right? And he's just kind of, you'd say, over the target is a term because he's doing what he said he was going to do, and it doesn't really fall in line with the narrative, say that the media or left-wing politics or even establishment Republicans would like. And so President Trump, he is such a disruptor. He's a disrupting force. And therefore, because you are kind of like a bull in the china shop and you're breaking all the china, the owner of the china shop, that is the left, the media, and establishment Republicans, well, they're obviously very upset about it because Trump is coming in and literally undoing and shattering their ways, DC ways for however many decades. So yeah, you're gonna take some heat for that, and he recognizes that. He knows that. Is he unfairly treated? Well, of course. I always say, President Trump could be the guy to cure cancer, and the media would run a headline, thanks to Donald Trump, now cancer doctors out of a job. That would just kind of be, that would be the headline, and it's unfortunate, but it's part of the territory.
Well, it's not funny you say that. Childhood cancer is never funny. So not using the word, let's just say the irony of it all is President Bush, the older Bush, said with this new world order he had once announced that a border guard will lose his job and he'll be blamed for that. And so there is that. Does it happen with when we look historically and compare historically what happens to politicians in big positions, that does happen.
Sure.
And so I don't know that it's fair. I don't know that it's unfair. I don't know that
Part
it's
of the
right.
territory.
Territorial. It's part of the territory. Absolutely. And it's a good thing. But my question now is, and I don't want to get too, is it fair? Are we going to apply the same rules to an imam at a mosque if he applies for those tax breaks? Are we going to apply those same rules to a Jewish rabbi if he applies for those? Because I happen to remember in Orlando, and I'm just using an example without specifics, there was this giant theme park. It was a religious-based theme park, and the owners of the theme park had these beautiful homes in a very exclusive community, and they're very expensive homes. I don't know the value of the homes. I'm not a realtor, but they're very expensive. They're way above the millions, and they asked that they be considered parsonages. And the Orlando government essentially, without again going into specifics, said no, these just don't constitute parsonage. What a parsonage is a simple place for a priest or a rabbi to live on his campus, if you will. So was that an unfair targeting? That the answer was no. These big beautiful mansions would that now be considered a parsonage?
It's a great question. Not knowing obviously the specifics of what that is, I can't say definitively yes or no. From the way you described it, it sounds like probably the right decision was made. There's obviously certain parameters that define what a parsonage is, and obviously those $1 million+ homes didn't meet that criteria. So not knowing the specifics, I couldn't say.
Right, and I don't want to get into the specifics of it just because it's their private business, and I don't know how it wound up in the end. So
yeah, I would just say, listen, Muslims are not being targeted in this country by the federal government. Jews are not being targeted by the federal government in this country. They may be being targeted culturally by people within the culture, but it's a pretty exclusive group that's being targeted by the federal government. It has been conservative Christians. And so it is not to say give favor to or make special treatment towards. It's everyone should be treated the same. Whether you're a Christian, a Muslim, a Jew, or not at all, none of the above. Everyone should be treated the same. You shouldn't be targeted by your own government because of your faith. That's kind of the purpose. Protect your religious liberty, because religious liberty extends to all people of all faiths. And it's your decision how you practice your faith without being concerned that if I choose to be a conservative evangelical, well, now I got to be worried about the IRS is going to come after me. That should never cross your mind.
That should not be the case. No.
You should be able to be a conservative evangelical without any concerns that you're going to be audited simply because you're a conservative evangelical.
Well, and that I 100% agree. And I think that's a beautiful thing, that even if you were to say we're on two different sides of the aisle, we can honestly agree with something. I think that's a beautiful thing that just came out of this conversation. And if that's what's being done, I applaud the president's efforts. What is a concern now is, or not a concern, is that when you say it's not Republicans versus Democrats, that there is sort of, for the lesser popular word, a collusion between some streamlined some Republicans, basically old school Republicans, that feel like they want to be the next Reagan Democrat, and Democrats, when there's this connection, how far how much success will this new office have, and will it be dismantled if a new if a new party takes leadership in the White House?
Yeah, it's a great question, obviously, because it's a first of its kind. It's brand new. It's only what, 10 months old. And it was at the order and the creation of the president. Therefore, you could logically assume if you have another party with another candidate, say Gavin Newsom is the president come 2028, which I sure hope he's not, but let's just hypothetically say he is.
Well, I
Well,
think
then
even
he
worse
could.
would be Andrea Ocasio-Cortez, but that's just me thinking out loud. But I'm just thinking out loud for a moment. Go ahead, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Yeah, or say AOC is your president, right? And Bernie's the vice president. They could easily undo and get rid of the faith office, which is, an unfortunate thing. And so the hope would be obviously that there would be a recognition across party politics that religious liberty is vital to just America, not to the Republican Party or the Democratic Party. That, the faith office is designed and geared just to make sure everybody who is a person of faith is protected in the United States of America. And that may be one day, there may be a singling out of Jews or Muslims or whoever. You don't know what culture and government may do in the future, that the faith office would be there to protect Muslims and Jews or whoever the case may be. Right now, the issue is Christians are the ones being targeted. That's the current issue. That doesn't mean it's going to be the issue 10 years from now. Could be a totally different group of people. However, the faith office, if it is able to stay in existence, it is there to serve people of faith and to make sure their voices are being heard at the highest level of government.
So now let's just throw out one more wild card, and I'm going to go on to another sub. I'm going to go on to something, another one of the bullet points that I really want to get into. But let's just throw out a wild card. Let's say Tulsi Gabbard gets elected president next, right? And she says, because at this moment in time, there's a sense of there's a good reason, there's a reason to believe that this office is really going to have the ability to do what it wants to do. But if Tulsi Gabbard, the new president, just hypothetically speaking, says let's take it down a notch, will that be would that be considered by the Christian conservatives, by the Christian movement, that she's abandoning the office? Or would there be some sense of reason? Because what we're missing today in governing from both sides is a sense of reason, a sense of compromise. If that were this one particular line item, this office, it's not a line item, it's an office, and it's an important office, and we've agreed on that. But if they say, if she does put the brakes on something, will that be an abandonment of the office, considered an abandonment of the office?
Well, I guess you'd have to ask, what would be the reason behind wanting to put the brakes on it? Because I think for the most part, and I'm just generalizing here, for the most part, all of us would agree on the vitality and the need of religious freedom. So the question would be, why would you want to put a brakes on something that is protecting religious freedom? And maybe the answer would be, well, the office is getting outside its parameters of what it was originally intended and created to do. And because it's outside those parameters, we're going to pump the brakes on it. That would be reasonable, right? That would be reasonable. But if it's just simply because I want to pump the brakes on it, well, I don't think that'd be very reasonable. So that would, like I said, what's the driving force? What would be the reason to pump the brakes and maybe draw it back in? If it's because it's going outside the parameters of why it was created, totally understandable, totally reasonable. But if it's simply because I don't like an office of faith, well, I think that would be a little problematic.
Well, I agree with you there, 100%. I was going to bring up one more thing before we went on to the next thing. I do go on SupremeCourt.org and listen to cases. Are you familiar with the case Mahmoud versus Taylor, which was essentially a case where kids had to go to class to hear the reading of certain books? For example, Mr. Little Johnny has two daddies. I don't know the books really.
Sure.
And they couldn't opt out. But I remember then when the conservative side was making their case, they talked about how they let kids opt out of singing certain Christian songs in choir. And that didn't present this scheduling nightmare that they said would have been presented if kids were able to opt out of these readings of certain books. So kids are able to opt out of books. So there was a sense of reason. They lost a case, and I think even Justice Keegan voted alongside with the conservative justices on this particular case. And so I see the sense of reason that's coming about all of this. And I just hope we don't go backwards, but I also hope we do embrace sensible reevaluation. And that's the only I just want to make that point. And I think like you said, if it's going outside the parameters of the office, let's consider it and let's not take it overly personal, is what maybe I was thinking.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like I said, it would just depend on what the scenario is at that point in time, obviously,
Right.
because right now it's an infant trying to figure out its path. You know, what really does a faith office look like? What does it really do? What is its parameters? Those things are being quote unquote discovered as we speak, and so I can just say that the parameters that President Trump has defined is to protect religious liberty. That's essentially the parameters, and but then you got to walk that out. You got to flesh that out. What does that actually look like?
And I think you have done a great job of explaining that office, and I hope that there's more time spent explaining that office from a government standpoint. I don't know how it will be done. I don't know how you. It's important to let the people know that this is happening, and it's a protection for everybody. It's not just a protection. So let's move on to what churches must do ahead of the 2024. What churches must do ahead of 2024 to reclaim cultural influence? How can churches? So that's a big question on my part. What could they do to So, for example, and I'm just using another real problem to reclaim cultural influence. We have a thing in the United States. It's called timing out. Foster kids time out of foster care at the age of 18. They're thrown to this complicated world with a certain amount of money every month that doesn't really make it. Can church get involved with things like that, helping these kids, educate these skills, dropping life skills on them, or is it again would it be encroaching on people's religious liberties?
No, I think that churches have to engage within the culture that we are in. I mean, part of the command of Jesus to all believers is to be salt and to be light within the world that you're in. Salt is a preservative. It helps preserve decaying meat. So, therefore, as Christians, we want to help preserve a decaying culture. And then light obviously invades darkness. And we live in a very dark world. And so we have to go outside our four walls of our churches and engage in helping people, loving people. And so some of the things that churches can do that are a benefit to their community is opening up their church for daycares. The cost of childcare is outrageous in this country. That's why so many people are opting out of having children, is because they can't afford to have kids and send them to daycare because both parents have to work. Well, churches are primed in position to be able to help meet this need. My church in Tulsa, we're doing this actually because churches already have classrooms that can operate as daycares. They already have liability insurance for taking care of children because that's what you do at kids' church. And so our church, we have a learning center that is Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. And we are able to be vastly cheaper than every other daycare in our city simply because we already have the building. We're already paying for the insurance, already covering the utilities. We already have the classrooms. We're prime position to be a benefit to parents to lower the cost of their childcare. So churches, that's an immediate boom. That's something you can do. In regards to adoption and foster care, it's interesting in the state of Oklahoma, they've ran a statistic that if every church in Oklahoma, just every church in Oklahoma, would commit to helping one family, so one family in every church adopting one child, there would not be a single child in foster care in the state of Oklahoma. So think about that. Every church in Oklahoma committing to help one family in the church adopt one child in the state of Oklahoma, you would completely empty the foster care system in the state of Oklahoma. And I bet you those numbers are probably similar to almost every other state within the country. So could churches really help these social issues? Yeah, we're primed. We're ready for it. I just don't think a lot of churches know how. How do you do these things? Sounds great, right? Sign me up. How do I do it? And that's one of the other aspects that the faith office helps in is resourcing and equipping places of worship in order to help engage and help the community where they are.
So okay, this is very, very, very interesting. It's just one word you used in particular that I like it, that I think needs to be expanded. Not only daycare, but night care. So parents often need somebody to work. A single parent may have to work at night to really make ends meet. So now you're saying, well, let's expand this idea through this office. How much is this office able to do right now? And then comes, of course, the important feature of funding. How much could we realistically, so we close, I'm not getting into a very complicated political issue. I'm just using it as an example. We close the Department of Education. There's an expense there that's, I guess you could say, no longer there. Can we use that money to get it out there to the churches? And I don't really think it just has to be that money. There's a lot of money in the federal government, and it's being used for different things that I don't necessarily think are cost effective. So I'm always saying, what more can that office do, and what kind of funding can it provide without? Often people almost don't want anything to do with federal government funding simply because of the regulations that come along with it. Suddenly you get $1 million, but you got to pay every daycare worker $40 an hour. Well, that $1 million just went away. When you got these kind of stipulations, you're like, I can't even have that money because I've already got 12 people on staff that are making $18 an hour. So that's going to go up significantly and eat up my million. So how much can we do effectively? How,
Yeah, this is one of the things that President Trump has asked for a comprehensive proposal from the faith office. How could the federal government partner with houses of worship, churches, and things like that to solve the child care crisis? Because you'll notice President Trump is very big right now on wanting Americans to have babies. He wants Americans. He's incentivizing young couples to have babies. But part of the hindrance in young couples having babies is just simply the cost of childcare. They literally just cannot afford to have children. And so, how could local houses of worship come alongside, partner with the community to reduce that cost? And so, the federal government obviously can give out grants and things like that to local houses of worship. One of the things would be like this. Let's say you have a church, you already have kids' classrooms, you're already carrying liability insurance, you have all the stuff. But the DHS in your state or the city that you're in has a certain requirement that every classroom needs to have a sink in it. All right. I'm just giving a hypothetical.
right.
Every classroom has to have a sink in it. Well, maybe your church doesn't have a sink in every single classroom. So there could be a grant to get your church building up to par so that you could actually host a learning center, so that the expense doesn't come out of your church's funding, but the federal government can make sure your building is brought up to essentially code so that you can have a learning center. So a proposal will be given to the president that's exhaustive, because this is one of the issues that he wants to tackle head first. And so right now, it's obviously in the beginning stages. How do you do this? And to your point, there's going to be a lot of churches that will be like, I don't want any money
Well, not
from the federal
necessarily they
government.
don't want the money from the federal government, but when the strings are attached,
It's the
it's the
strings, yeah.
problem. Right.
Yeah.
It's the problem. And if it doesn't matter what the string is, if it's too complicated to apply for, certain churches don't have the staffing to do that.
Right.
Or don't,
Right.
and it may be the staffing, or maybe just maybe the understanding of the jargon. They may have somebody that's willing to read a 500-pound document. They just don't know what they're reading.
Yeah.
So
That's the role of the faith office, by the way. The role of the faith office to help pierce through all of that on behalf of the faith community. That's one of the roles. And so, obviously, like I said, this is still in the early beginning stages. It'll be fleshed out more and more as we go along in this process, but it's something that the president has placed quite a bit of urgency on.
Well, not to press you on specifics, I'm just excited about the prospects of it. I'm just saying,
Yeah.
it's something I've always talked about. I've even gone so far as to say, when we think of what the churches must do ahead to reclaim their culture, I think of food insecurity. Children with food insecurity are more likely to turn to crime at an enormous percentage. So I just think imagine if the churches provided a place where kids that are literally out late at night with nothing to eat, if they can go have a place to sleep, if they can go have a meal on a real plate with real glassware and real silverware and a healthy meal, not a bag with mozzarella sticks and a chocolate milk, not a paper bag with. I mean, I'm just excited about the prospects of this office. Like you said, there's a lot of work that goes into the proposal that hits the president's desk.
Yeah.
I'm not asking for those specifics. I would love to see this happen, is what I'm saying.
Well, I believe it's going to.
Yeah.
President Trump's the type of leader, when he wants something done, he makes sure it gets done. And this is a high priority because he just recognizes if Americans don't have babies, we're in a lot of trouble in the near future. And so this is part of helping solve the issue of the child care cost. And then obviously, to your point, then you have the adoption foster care thing. And so churches are primed to be able to step into these roles, because think about it, the most useless piece of real estate all week in a community is a church. Churches are only open Sunday morning and maybe Wednesday night, right? And then for the rest of the week, it's closed. It's the biggest waste of real estate space in the community. So how could it be utilized to be a benefit to the community? And so we're working through these things.
And so just and then I'm going to go on to the next bullet point. But the Pope Lee, the newly elected, appointed Pope, was talking about how the church can do more about immigrants. But I'm sure his focus is children as well.
Sure.
So there could be a connection there, But and so I just looking forward to the prospects here, and maybe we can stay in contact outside of the podcast.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I mean, because and this is beautiful that you took the time and you've been so generous with your time to share your thoughts with me on this podcast. I just want to say thank you again. But I also want to cover. So, how platform culture is destroying real leadership in both ministry and politics? Can you explain that even to me?
Yeah. Well, I wrote a book. All about it. So it does a
Beautiful. I
much
wanted to talk
better.
about that too. Yeah.
Yeah. Chasing after the wind, why nobody is catching what all of us are chasing. And Darryl Strawberry, the great baseball player, wrote the foreword for me. And so this book is really all about what you brought up in your question. There is one thing that all of us, regardless of ethnicity, political background, age, culture, there's one thing that everyone wants, and that's to be happy. That's really what all of us truly want. Why do we do what we do? It's because we think it'll make us happy. Being in power would make us happy. Being wealthy will make us happy. Having children will make us happy. We do these things because our hearts long to be happy. However, happiness is like the wind. It's elusive. You never actually catch it. You chase it your entire life. You chase it through things and people and ideas, and you never truly catch it. And so the question then becomes, how can you catch the wind? How can you find genuine happiness and peace and contentment? And that's why I wrote the book for, and we're getting great reviews. People are saying it's, just changing their life. But platform Christianity, platform culture is dangerous because we're putting up a front that is not real. I'm hiding behind my Instagram filter. You're hiding behind your Instagram filter. I'm comparing my filtered life to your filtered life. It's fake. It's not real. And so we put out a persona. I'm happy, when in reality, I'm miserable. We just look at the stats. The stats in the United States of America are incredible. People are unhappy. They're depressed. They're miserable. And that's because we live behind filters. We're living in this type of, we are our own producers. We are our own actors in our own highlight reel. And we're miserable. So I wrote the book for that purpose. How do we address that issue right there? And the key is being an authentic you and coming into a relationship with God, because in the presence of God, the Bible tells us there's the fullness of joy, And that's what we want. We are designed and we're wired to be happy, to have joy. That's why we seek it. We'll do bad things to be happy. We'll become alcoholics with the promise that alcohol will make us happy, drown out the sorrows. We'll become porn addicts in the sense that porn will make me happy in the moment. And it does in the moment, but it makes you miserable in the long run. We'll do terrible things to ourselves pursuing happiness. And so how do you catch the wind? And you have to get the book. I'll send you a copy, man. I'll send you, if you'll give me your address, I'll send you a copy.
I will. That would be people because I wanted to talk about the book and I love and Daryl Strawberry did the forward, so I think it's got to be incredible because I mean that's a
Daryl's a good man.
so that's a pretty good pretty neat forward to be done by for somebody to do the forward for you. So that sounds really exciting to read that. Now when I can honestly say, and I do have Jesus in my life. I don't necessarily say I am not an evangelical Christian. I have Jesus. I love having my relationship with Jesus. I love Jesus. I don't necessarily I don't really read the Bible, but I am happy. I'm fine. I'm fine with my share of the bounty. I'm fine where I live. I love my family. And I haven't really chased anything. You know, the realization of the podcast was when I ran for office one time, the biggest thing on the radar was how much money am I raising? And I remember responding often, I don't raise money, I raise awareness. Well, everybody thought that I'm just an idiot, that I shouldn't be in politics. I said, you know what? You're right. So I'll do a podcast and try to raise awareness. And so the other day I had Lieutenant Jonathan Lapido, a lieutenant colonel from the Army, retired after 30 years. He goes, "You're one of those libs that listen." And I'm like, I respect all y'all's opinions 100%. I've never said I'm adamantly opposed to conservative politics. Never said I'm a socialist. I'm a capitalist. But some things don't fit well with my mindset. And it seems like if you ever convey that to somebody, they jump down your throat. Is that because they're unhappy? Is that because they think if they subscribe 100% to one side, they'll find happiness?
It's kind of, we don't like our ideas to have pushback if we haven't really thought them through, because we don't have an argument to present of why our idea, thought of life is correct. And so we don't like, pushback a little. Nobody likes pushback. We like those that agree with us. We're all tribal by nature. That's why we cling to people who look like us, people who talk like us, people who think like us. Every human being is tribal by nature. As much as we say diversity, 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 we're tribal by nature. We go to people who look like us, talk like us, think like us, behave like us. That's what it is to be human. And we tend to not like other tribes. Oh, they don't look like me. They don't talk like me. They don't think like me. They don't act like me. And so that's the fallen human condition. And the good news, the reason I love Christianity is because all these different tribes can come together for a bigger purpose, and that is Jesus is Lord. He's the Lord of my tribe, and he's the Lord of your tribe. Even if we look different, talk different, think different, now we're part of one bigger tribe, and we are marked as Christians rather than Republicans or Democrats, black, white, old, young, whatever the case may be.
That's really a neat way to look at it. I never thought of us as being tribal, but we are essentially.
Oh my! Listen, this is how you know you're tribal. You go into the airport at Chicago, you see somebody, you pass right by them, you'll never say a word to them because everyone at Chicago Airport, for the most part, is an American. That same person you run into at the airport in Hong Kong, you know what you'll do all of a sudden? That person will become your best friend. He'll be the only one you talk to. You'll ask him all. Now, you would have never talked to that person at Chicago. Why? Because you're in a tribe that is so large, everyone's like you. But whenever you're in the Hong Kong airport, nobody looks like you. Nobody's talking like you. All of a sudden, there's one who is similar to you. That'll become your best friend. We are tribal by nature. And it can be good and it can be bad. Unfortunately, there's been a lot of bad because of it. And so, but that's why I love Christianity. We're a part of one universal, worldwide, big tribe that transcends all of our smaller tribalism.
That's really beautiful, and I hope that's really what opens up I hope because we're at a crossroad in America. There's a lot of hard feelings on. I just I don't like it. You know, again, just using there was a time when Justice like Sandra Day O'Connor would get appointed by 99 votes in the Senate. Now you can't hardly the high water mark is 52. You know,
Right.
you can't even get past that anymore. You can't even I mean uh I think I guess you would say I'm a liberal. I don't know. I consider myself a centrist, more center right, but I think Amy Coney Barrett's an incredible justice. I mean, and it was a contentious, you know, nomination. So I just like to get past some of that. I don't know how you do it. I think you've done a great job, and I haven't seen the book yet, but I'm excited to receive it.
Yeah, I'm going to get it to you.
Yeah, and I think that's you're young. I'm getting too old for it. I mean, I probably got 10 seasons left if I'm lucky, but you've got a lot of reach, you've got a lot of, and I don't care who becomes the next president. I would like to continue on this course where religion is open-minded, where it's not, if it is targeted, and like you said, there are plenty of examples where it's been targeted, that needs to stop.
Yeah.
I can't imagine we had to start an office in the White House to stop it, but if that's what we had to do, we need to do it and follow through with it.
Yeah, and it's a fix to an immediate problem, but it's a long-term solution to make sure it never happens again to anybody else. Because, like I said, a Muslim should not be audited simply because he or she's a Muslim. Now, if they're doing something shady financially and there's probable cause for the IRS, that's one thing. But to target Muslims or Jews or Hindus or Christians, well, that's a problem. That's a problem. And that's been the unfortunate reality that our federal government had been in. And so, we're rectifying those wrongs, optimistic about the future, optimistic about this office can help make sure that in the future, these things are not happening. Right now, the purpose is to fix the wrong, but in the future, it's to prevent these wrongs from happening again. And so, great things are happening, man. And thanks for having me on. I really enjoyed this, and I'll be sure to get you a book, and you'll have to give me some feedback on what you think.
Oh, I'm excited. I'm going to email you my address in just a moment. I'm just I want to thank you for being on the show. Thank you so much and being so generous with your time. It's been an incredible conversation. I'm looking forward to not only what you just said about the targeting stopping. I'm looking forward for the other part of the
Yeah.
office where we, like you said, the most underutilized real estate in America is the churches.
Yeah.
Let's get them things flowing with traffic. Let's get them things feeding hungry kids. Let's get them things teaching kids that
Yep.
if nothing else, if they are in the K through 12 system, let's teach them about life skills, about
So much potential, so much
huge,
opportunity.
huge. It's
After school
enormous.
programs, financial literacy, after school programs of, whatever athletics. So, I mean, most churches have gymnasiums. I mean, if you think about what churches have, they are primed in their position to make a huge impact. Now we just need to empower and unleash these places of worship within their communities to really be light in that, say, dark environment. And so, yeah, I'm excited about the opportunities. We just have to seize the opportunity.
So I'm gonna let you go right after this one thing. When you say financial literacy, I know we can keep going and going, and I know we really should cut it at. When we think of financial literacy, I help out at a shelter for homeless veterans, and often people think veterans are homeless because they're PTSD. Often they're homeless because they don't have financial literacy. When they join the Army or the Navy, they then have everything provided for them, like two hots and a cot, I guess is the old statement. Then they get out, they still don't have financial literacy, and they wind up not being able to get things like a home or a car. So even if the church took part in that, and I mean, this could. So then, and my only last point, I'm going to let you go. It's been incredible. Is I love to talk about the notion of Doge and not just an acronym, Department of Government. What is the return on investment if we did all these things? How much would we really save if we really accomplished so much of this?
I
So
think you
I'm
would
looking.
transform society. I think you would transform society. I really do. Because to your point, financial literacy, most Americans are financially illiterate. It's unfortunate. But financial literacy, just understanding the basics. I'm not talking being, an MBA from Harvard in economics. I'm just talking the basics because we're not taught these things in public school at all. And so, unless your parents teach you, you're pretty much out on your own, unless you go, read a book like Rich Dad Poor Dad from Robert Kiyosaki, or you go read, who's the other guy? I can't think of his name. But unless you make that investment by going and studying those things, you'll probably be financially illiterate and struggle for the most part in your finances. And so churches could really help just teaching the basics, just the basics. And so it's exciting, man. It's exciting.
I love it. Teaching the basics in those beautiful underused buildings. I love it. Teaching Rich Dad Poor Dad is a great book, but it's very vague. It says you need to learn the basics. It's
Yeah,
great
yeah.
that he says it, but then he doesn't go much further
You
than
got to
that.
go
He
do
just say
it.
you got to do it, and here's why, and here's what it will accomplish. But
Yep.
you better do it. Well, thank you so much. This has been absolutely my pleasure, and so Jackson, I would love to have the book. I really appreciate your time. If you want to talk about the book before you go, how where it's available on Amazon, audio, just go ahead and
Yeah, so the book's on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Books a Million, Thrift. I mean, you name it, it's on all those platforms. But the best way to get it is go to my website, jacksonlawmeyer.com. And if you go to my website, you get a signed copy. So if you go to Amazon, it's not signed. You go to Barnes and Noble, it's not signed. But if you go to jacksonlawmeyer.com, it's the same price as Amazon, Barnes and Noble, but it's different. It's a signed copy, and you get the free ebook. So not only do you get the book in physical form, you get the digital book for free along with it. So there's like, go to jacksonlawmeyer.com before you go to Amazon, and you get a much better deal.
I'm looking forward to that. I'm getting a signed copy, right?
I'm sending it your way, boss.
And it's signed. It's got to be signed.
Yeah, oh, it'll be
I
signed. It'll
want
be
that. I
signed.
want
Now,
that.
that may increase or decrease the value. I can't tell you which
I think
one,
it's gonna,
but
in my heart, it's gonna increase the value enormously. So that's really often what matters to me. So, funny thing, this is Political No Brainer Podcast. We are rebranding to the chair across the aisle. I think we want to get more into topics like this than just absolute contentious politics. We will have contentious politics as well at times, but I'm looking forward to. We'll talk more. Really, I want to stay in touch.
awesome. Well, I appreciate it, sir.
Thank you,
Likewise.
thank you so much, Jackson. Have a great day.
You too, man. Be blessed.
Be blessed, sir. God bless you.